welcome to another episode of the Power of United Impact podcast. I'm Michelle Tucker here at United Way of Greater St. Louis. I'm the president and CEO, and I am here with a dear friend of mine, actually is a longtime friend, who leads one of the agencies that is a part of our network and has been a longtime partner, Meredith Knopp, the president and CEO of the St. Louis Foodbank. Welcome to you, Meredith.
Thank you for having me. It's so good to see you.
It's good to see you too. And let me explain this longtime friend. So Meredith and I know each other from back in the day when I was at Bank of America as a corporate funder, and she was at Junior Achievement.
Yes, ma'am. That's correct.
Yes. And so what I appreciate about you and your leadership is that you have been focused on impacting the community in a tremendous way for a very long time.
Well, thank you.
Yes, and so that brings us to our conversation today where you are leading the St. Louis Foodbank, and we want to talk to you more about that. But before we dive into it, I want you to tell people a little bit more about your journey to St. Louis Foodbank and what brings you there, and maybe a little bit more about your why.
Sure. Well, my path to the St. Louis Area Foodbank is a winding road. It is a definite non-traditional. So after college, I actually spent my first 8 years in the United States Army. So I was a platoon leader and company commander here and overseas. I actually got to Missouri through the Army. I was a commander in Korea for 2 years, and they sent me to Fort Leonard Wood. So that's how I got to Missouri.
Okay.
So I left the military, worked in the for-profit sector for a few years, as many of us do. Loved it, learned from it, but really it wasn't filling my sense of purpose, right? My why, my bucket was really not full. And so I did make that jump, went over to Junior Achievement, spent about 4 years there, loved it, learned so much about our community, the incredible diversity and generosity of the St. Louis area. Was recruited then to the Mission Continues, spent about 5.5, 6 years there growing that from a startup to a nationwide organization. Started my own kind of group that is now its own 501c3 called Heroes Care. But then in late 2017, I remember getting ready to go on a work trip for Mission Continues, and my daughter, who at the time was 4.5, said, "Mommy, do you have to go?" And I said, "Well, baby, I do, but I'll come home and we'll have fun." She said, "Can't you tell your boss I need you more than he does?" And my world stopped. So that was my first indication that although I thought I was slaying it, right, as a mommy and an executive, I needed to take a deeper look. And so she is the reason I started to look at other opportunities. And there was an opportunity at the St. Louis Area Foodbank. Their longtime leader, Frank Finnegan, who was there for almost 30 years, was retiring. And so I was hired on to take the helm from him back in February of 2018. But it's interesting that my roots in food banking actually go back to when I lived in Detroit. I used to volunteer at St. Patrick's Soup Kitchen in Detroit, Michigan, and volunteer at Gleaner's Food Bank, which is also part of the Feeding America network. We'll get to that later. And I remember going there and just as a young child, trying to wrap my head around the fact that people didn't have enough to eat, right? And recognizing that that wasn't okay, and that what we were doing was helping them. But then we also got to go home at night, and we're fortunate and privileged to be able to go home and open up a refrigerator, open up a pantry, and there was something there. So our question, right, the tough question at the age of 5 was, what's for dinner? Not, do we have anything to eat for dinner?
Well,
so that's how my journey started way back when.
oh my goodness. Thank you for sharing that. It helps to give context to, a lot of the things that we already know about what you're doing today, but to have that background to help us to understand the passion and the drive around what you are here doing, it's very helpful. Let's talk about the St. Louis Area Foodbank,
Yes.
because I know that this year you are celebrating as an agency 50 years. Congratulations, first of all.
Thank you.
Yeah. I want people to really understand what St. Louis Area Foodbank does. And so there are some misconceptions
Yes.
and sometimes confusion around, food banks and who's doing what, who's on first. And I wanted to give you an opportunity to just talk to us a bit about what it is you do and how you are serving over 50 million meals a year. Talk to me about your efforts and
Yes.
help me to clear things up for the community.
Yes. Well, thank you for this opportunity. So the St. Louis Area Food Bank, we were founded in 1975. So this year we will commemorate 50 years of service and impact in our community. So breaking it down, we have the privilege and honor of supporting 26 counties, 14 here on the Missouri side, and 12 on the Illinois side. And so we do that through a myriad of different avenues. The first is through what we call our partner agencies. These are your food pantries, right? Let's get the lingo right.
Yes.
So these are the food pantries. They could be standalone pantries. A lot of them are in faith-based organizations throughout the metro area. And so we are really the ones who are sourcing that food from all across the country. Think of your farmers, your growers, your ag, your grocery stores, your retailers, manufacturers, distributors. We're sourcing that food and bringing it to the St. Louis Area Food Bank out in Bridgeton. And then our job and responsibility is to sort that food and distribute that food across this incredible network, usually run by volunteers, right, on the front lines each and every day of our communities, who are telling us what they need, what they don't need, where they're struggling. So it is an awesome responsibility, but a true honor to partner with so many wonderful, wonderful people across our area. And then we also have the programs that we run, right? So we have our school markets, which we started a few years ago. And these are beautiful pantries at our schools, our elementary schools, our middle school, our high schools, and our higher ed, right? So now we're even in colleges. And so we're meeting that need in fun and familiar ways, right? So kiddos who go there, families can go there and get food for their families at no cost to them. Very, very important, but they're familiar. So it's not like, oh, wow, did you see Meredith at the pantry? It's, hey, Meredith, you want to go to the pantry in the school market? So they're in school colors, they're themed, their names, and a lot of times they're run by the kiddos, right? Especially in the elementary schools. Those 4th and 5th graders they're receiving the truck, they're stocking the shelves. So they're learning those skills at a very young age. And then we also have our farms programs. These are our food access and resource markets, otherwise known as those drive-through distributions that a lot of people saw during COVID. We were doing before they were popular in COVID, but it's a way that we're able to feed and serve about 500 people for each one of these farms. And we do 2 per county, 26 counties, 52 a month. And then we have our Food on the Move program. This is an award-winning program that really takes these mobile grocery stores on wheels out into communities where there is high food insecurity, high poverty, but also where transportation is a barrier, right? And so we're meeting people where they are at times that are convenient to them with healthy and nutritious foods. They can walk through these beautiful trailers. They're ADA compliant. They're able to select. So again, dignity and respect is really important to what we do. And they're able to get all this food, again, at no cost. Right. And that's our real competitive advantage. There's other groups and organizations also doing great work, but the St. Louis Area Food Bank is the only organization that never charges for food.
Wow.
And that makes a difference, especially, when times are tough or you're on a fixed income.
It makes a huge difference.
It does.
Makes a huge difference. And, you talked about, quite a bit, but as I think back to when things started to unfold during COVID, yes. I remember, us all just trying to figure out quickly, what is our role, right? How do we help the community to weather through what we were experiencing? And I remember reaching out to you. You may not remember this, but everyone was doing what they needed to do, right? Mm-hmm. But I remember I needed something very specific because there was a pocket that wasn't covered. I believe it was over in Illinois.
Yes, ma'am.
And I reached out to you. It was probably just a quick text. And, in the midst of everything that was happening, you were extremely responsive, and you got right on it, and you were able to help us to provide resources where we needed them. So I just want to publicly compliment you and let you know that you are an incredible resource for this community. And I appreciate your partnership. So thank you for what you're out there doing. And, as I'm talking about partnerships and thinking about that more, let's talk about partnerships across the United Way network.
Yes.
And, collaborating closely with us as a part of our safety net, and then how you are working hand in hand with partners to impact the community to a greater degree when you work together. Talk to me about some of that.
Sure. So, first and foremost, we take a lot of pride in being, the community's response, right? So when we get those calls, we get those texts, right? Our world stops. Someone needs us, and somebody needs us right now, not a week from now, not a month from now. Right. So it is such a privilege to be a part of the United Way network, because there's so many wonderful organizations, right, doing great work. And I think that's the power of this network, is that we recognize that nobody can do it all by themselves.
It cannot.
It is absolutely impossible.
None of us.
So we all need to focus in on what we do best, and then really work to reach out and say, hey, we can do this. What can you do?
Right.
Or if you're already doing this, where are the gaps? And it's having those honest conversations, and it's inviting people to the table to say, this is where we are. Where are you? What can you bring? What can you do? And bringing really smart people together to say, how do we innovate? How do we create a solution? Not because it's about us. It's about the people who are looking to us for answers,
right,
that may not have a voice and that need help, right? And no one is really out there living in a great house, driving a great car, but just needs food, right? So it's important that we are able to work with the other United Way agencies that focus on housing, that focus on jobs, that focus on transportation, to say, how do we come up with collaboratively a collective answer that really helps families in the times when they need it most?
I agree with you wholeheartedly. And, you touch on so many things. And earlier you talked about volunteers and how they help you to serve the regional area. And so I really want to talk about that more, because there's power in that, right? And volunteers mobilizing into our missions and helping us to increase the impact that we're able to make, because you have all hands on deck. And I know that, as I think about our volunteer center, and one of probably the most popular volunteer opportunities that people sign up for, it's to come out to St. Louis Area Foodbank to help you all. And I think because it's relatable, it's the food bank, and they know that they're going to be, touching, feeling, and having this hands-on impact, something that's tangible to them. Talk to me about volunteers. How important are they?
They are critical. We cannot do what we do without our volunteers. Hands down, without question. I think just in the first 9 months of this year alone, we've had over 66,000 volunteer hours. We can't do that. We can't serve 50,000 people. We can't serve 50 million meals with the 83 people we have on staff. The math doesn't work, Michelle. And so we are so grateful and so thankful and so blessed to have so many people. We'll have parents, we'll have kiddos, we'll have businesses, we'll have community groups, we'll have churches come out and choose to volunteer with us. And they're rolling up their sleeves and they're going through produce, and they're packing senior boxes. We had a group of kids out today from one of the local schools on their serve day. So young and old, but people feel good, to your point, Michelle, because they recognize that the work they're doing is local.
Yes.
A lot of times the food that comes in are from local farmers and growers. And so they have such joy when they get to come in and volunteer with us for 2 hours, 3 hours, and know that all of the meals, all of the food that they're packing and preparing is staying right here in our region. And they leave with this impact sheet that says how many pounds, how many meals that they helped contribute. And then I always challenge them, if you think this is cool, come out in community to one of our distributions.
Yeah.
And then you can make that connection with real people in our community who are receiving the fruits pun intended, of their labor to really understand that connection and how we are all one life event away from needing help.
That is so important. And so that resonates with me completely as I think about, bringing people closer to what the need is across the community and really having them take that in and understand it in a different way where it is relatable, like I said, and typically, working with food insecurity, people understand that, okay, it's food and people need it. But to get closer to really understanding why's behind that, why do people reach out and why is this resource so needed in the community? I think it's important that we bring people closer and closer. I want to do a shameless plug for stlvolunteer.org.
Please do.
Because again, that's where we're seeing those volunteers sign up to come out to get closer to what you are out there doing. And I'm going to just encourage people to continue that, because it is sometimes for people a first time they've gotten out into the community, and it feels very comfortable for them. It feels very safe for them to get out there as a first opportunity. And then once they're bitten by the volunteer bug, they get out there more and more. And so let's shamelessly plug that they should get out there and maybe start their volunteer journey with the St. Louis Area Foodbank.
They absolutely should. We love it. We create a safe environment. We show them videos to really tell the story. We play music, but we also want to dispel misconceptions people have, right? And I tell people, if I fall and break my leg, please don't want to put that out there, but, I have a cast on. Like, you can tell something is wrong. You can't tell when someone is food insecure.
No.
They don't look different. They're not wearing signs or banners. And so food insecurity can happen to anyone. It's not restricted to a zip code. People are often surprised when I tell them that there's a large percentage of food insecure people in our rural communities, within our military populations. We do a distribution out at Mid-Rivers Mall in St. Peter's. We have, 300, 500 cars every month. And so there's not something that categorizes people, people that are impacted by a disaster, a flood, a tornado. We have those far too often here in the bi-state. These are reasons why people are going to a food pantry or calling the St. Louis Area Foodbank. They have a job loss. They have an unforeseen medical condition,
right?
And maybe they don't have insurance to cover those costs. There are many, many reasons and ways that people get to us, and we are here to answer that call anytime the phone rings.
Oh, and we certainly appreciate it. You made me think about some things that have just stuck in my head around, what you just said. You can't look at someone and tell that they are in need of certain resources, and food being one. It's not something that people just walk around and wear a sign or you pick up on it. During COVID, people visited food banks for the very first time. They never had to rely on them, and some didn't even know how to connect to a food resource in the way that was needed. And so that was one of the things that was very much an eye-opener, right?
Yes.
And it said that we all are or can be vulnerable at any time, right? Any given time. And so that was the one example. And then the second that I can recall, and it was years ago, but it was really understanding that university students and college students were experiencing, challenges in connecting to food sources, and maybe they couldn't afford the lunch meal plan. Talk more about that, if you would.
Yes. No, and so we're seeing more and more of that, right? And people are going to school, right out of high school. People are going back to college, as adults, and maybe they have families or young children.
Yeah.
And so we've actually opened up quite a few pantries at our local colleges and universities to help meet that need, right? And sometimes students have help, financial aid with tuition or with, other facets of their education, but they still have to eat.
Right.
It is the common uniter. And that's what I tell people, that it's the one thing that unites us all is food. Each one of us, no matter where we live, what our zip codes are, what our demographics, everyone needs food to survive. And so that is the uniter. So that's why we're opening these pantries, excuse me, on colleges, campuses, because we want our students of any age to have access to healthy and nutritious foods to live their best possible lives, because it is hard to concentrate if you're hungry.
Exactly what I was thinking about. How can we focus on, education and things that we're trying to get our kids to stay connected to when, if they haven't eaten or they don't know where their next meal is going to come from, that's where the head is at.
Yes.
It's thinking about that and maybe not the curriculum that's in front of them. So food definitely important to this equation.
It absolutely is. And especially, as we have our school pantries with our younger kids.
Yes.
These are the next generation of leaders.
Got it.
For St. Louis. They're the next you and I, right?
Yes.
So we need to nurture them. We need to give them.
We do.
Absolutely. What you put in your body matters.
It does. Let's switch the focus just a little bit. I want to talk more about, I'll go back to partnerships, because you are a partner with us through our Community Information Exchange, our CIE, and that's where 211 shows up and all of that. I'd love for you to talk to us more about what that looks like and how we have made that partnership stronger even over the last year or so.
Yes. And so, I remember some of the early meetings about CIE, and we were so excited because we want to be a part of the solution that connects people, right? When you're struggling or you're in crisis, the last thing you want to do is have to go to multiple agencies and start off with name, address, right? And we want to help expedite this. And so having that network, having a 211 where people who maybe don't know the St. Louis Area Foodbank, but they know United Way or they know 211,
right?
And they know that that is a safe place where they're going to be treated respectfully, where they're going to be pointed in the right direction, not put on hold, right? Or not told to Google where to look, because goodness knows what they'll run into there, right? You don't want getting advice from Bigfoot, right? You want to have actual people on the other end. And so being a part of the 211 network, being a part of the CIA has been transformational, I think, to our community. And it will continue to be as it continues to grow and evolve. And we continue to invest in that technology to make it easier to meet people where they are when they need us most.
Yeah. And, for those that aren't that familiar with CIE, I'll talk about it as being it's a shared technology platform, and it allows us to work closer as nonprofits across the platform with like healthcare providers to make referrals, to make sure wraparound services are being provided. You can refer between agencies so that I always talk about mission creep, so you're not trying to service a client in a way that is not your specialty area. You can rely on a partner organization to bring those services to the forefront. And so that's what CIE, or the Community Information System, helps us to provide, right? Yes. And so thank you for that. And I'm still thinking about just the vital role that you're playing in the community, and as you partner with our network partners to deliver not only food, but that's just one sort of ingredient when we think about a success recipe, right?
Yes.
It's that and more that's needed. Let's talk more about some of the misconceptions about the work that you do. What are some of the biggest misconceptions about food insecurity and, like I said, the work?
Goodness gracious, we could go on for hours. A lot of it is, food insecurity doesn't happen where I live. It happens in far off, distant places that I couldn't even point to on a map, right? Or maybe it only happens in our metro areas, in our urban areas, right? It doesn't exist in our rural counties, or it doesn't exist out in West County. That couldn't be farther from the truth, right? Or people say like, oh, I go to my food bank. I'm like, I'm the food bank. You go to a food pantry, but they're all part of our network, right?
Yes.
And that's the most important part, is that we really need people to understand that the real struggle is here. There are people in your community. They may be neighbors, they may be friends, but let's be honest, it's hard to ask for help, especially if it's asking for food.
Right.
That is pride swallowing. That is humbling. We do our distributions that start maybe at 9 a.m. and people have been in line since 4 a.m. for food, and people will sometimes ask, like, how do you know these people really need it? Well, if you've been in line for 5 hours, I'm pretty sure you'd rather be doing anything else. And one of the stories that I share was we were at a distribution and we had a volunteer who asked me a question. He said, well, this person that just drove up, they're in a nicer car than I'm in. And I said, well, let's go ask. And they were kind of like, wait, what, you're going to do that? I said, yes, let's go ask. And it turned out this young lady was picking up food for 3 of her homebound neighbors. 2 had been her teachers as she was growing up. And she said, I do this as a way to pay it forward and to help them out because I know they need it and they couldn't get it without my assistance. And so it's this beautiful spirit of community that I always tell people, don't judge, right? Don't judge who's showing up in line, or don't judge, or don't have a misconception that it can only happen to. We know that that's not the fact. So I
want to discourage people, right?
No.
You don't know everyone's story.
You don't.
I think that's where we need to take a step back sometimes and not make assumptions.
Correct.
Yeah, and I'm glad you shared that as an example because that helps to sort of humanize what we're talking about. Do you have any additional stories you want to share? Because I think people, it helps them to crystallize what we're talking about when we hear about these personal stories or these human stories that have to bring to life what we're talking about.
Oh my gosh, how much time do we have? There are heartbreaking stories, right? I recall a story of a senior couple when we were out doing a distribution and we were trying to get them additional assistance besides just the food they had. And we were asking them questions about other benefits that they might qualify for. And I remember he looked and he said, oh no, it's okay. We get 3 meals a week. And I stopped. And I said, I'm sorry, what did you just say?
Wow.
He said, oh, we get 3 good meals a week. So give it to someone who needs it more. Right? And I see the looks in it, the woman that I just saw the other day who said, I'm so grateful you're here today because I was down to my last 2 cans of green beans and I didn't know how I was going to feed my family. We had another young couple that showed up to a distribution who was living out of their car. And they said, we need help, but before you help us, do you mind if we park and help you distribute the food? Because we want to do something to give back. And then I hear other stories of people who said, you know what? I didn't realize growing up that our food came from a food bank because my mom and dad never wanted to tell us that. But we always had food on the table thanks to you. And we were always treated with dignity and respect. And I know I've said those words a couple times, but that's so important that people understand that we don't want to just give out a food that is, ramen noodles, nothing against ramen noodles, but we want to give healthy and nutritious foods. And I love the stories of people who say, I'm volunteering here today because earlier in the week, I received food from you and I can't write you a check and I can't do anything, but I want to give you my time. Or the people who come back and say, when I needed you, you were there and you didn't ask me any questions because I really was embarrassed to have to ask for help. But I'm now back on my feet again. And now I want to help pay it forward. Wow. Or the sweet woman, I'll leave her name out of it, every Christmas who sends us a check for $2 with a sweet note that says, this is all I can give you. God bless you for what you do for our community. I could go on and on.
Oh, gosh. Thank you for what you do to source and supply the pantries across this regional area. And just you serving as a key part of our safety net is an incredible thing for our community. You have a distinction, actually, that I was made aware of with Feeding America.
Yes.
And it is a rare distinction. Will you talk a bit about that and how you get distinguished as a food bank in that way?
Right. So the St. Louis Area Foodbank is a proud part of the Feeding America network. So there's actually 198 food banks across the country serving every county in our nation that are part of this network. And so what that means is that we come together, we talk, we are problem solving, we are sharing food, we are talking about access to food and funds and resources and training and programs to really help, because helping people with food is not a competitive sport, right? So I can call my peers in Tampa or Detroit or San Diego or Houston and say, hey, we're struggling with this. I see you guys have got this figured out a little bit better. And they will literally send all of their programs, all of their resources, how they did stuff, because they realize it's not about us.
Right.
It's about our communities. And so actually last week, the St. Louis Area Foodbank was at the national conference in Atlanta. And we were one of 6 food banks that was recognized at their Network Excellence Awards for innovation.
Oh my God.
Thank you. And it was with a partnership we have with Amazon.
Yes.
We created a local partnership that has now been replicated nationally. So now it's not just helping people in our community, but it's helping other food banks across the Feeding America network get food and resources into the hands of communities all across the country. So proud of our team, so proud of how they're innovating and thinking bigger and thinking beyond even the bi-state region.
Wow. Incredible.
It's very cool.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
Thank you for leading the way.
Yeah, I was
Thank
proud.
you for representing St. Louis.
Right.
off.
Yeah,
Right.
so you got to do that.
Right. I appreciate you spending your time with us today. That wraps our episode of The Power of United Impact. I encourage people to follow us on our social channels and to watch our podcast anywhere you like to get your podcast, your favorite podcast, right? So tune in. Next time, we'll talk to another of our safety net partners about the things that they are out there doing as a collective.
Yes.
Through the United Way Network to help people live their best possible lives. I thank you again, Meredith, for what you're out there doing.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for being with us
your
today.
leadership.
Well, thank you. Thank you. We do it together.
Yes, ma'am.
Every day.